This conference will now be recorded.
We have confirmation. So, okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is July 22nd, and it is 9:10 a.m. Stephanie, could you take a roll call to confirm a quorum?
Yes, I can. Lori?
Here.
Annie?
Here.
Ed?
Here.
Kathy?
Here.
Owen?
Here.
And staff in attendance today, we have Assistant Attorney General Raul, Administrator Chad Cook, Compliance Investigator Dan Murphy, and Administrative Specialist Stephanie Perkins.
Excellent. And it looks like we have a member of the public here. That would be Scott DiBiasio. It looks like he's on mute. And that would just bring us right into our next item, which is the public input session. I'm sorry, we have a caller too. Oh, excuse me, Robert.
That's Owen.
I'm assuming that's Robert Keith.
So unless
caller
unless
two, I think is me, is Owen.
And
yeah, caller
Lord,
two, and then we have Robert and Scott DiBiasio.
And
So-
unless they intend to testify, they don't necessarily need to identify themselves for the
Yeah,
record.
understood.
If they're just
Understood.
attending. Yeah.
So do we have any public input today? Hearing none? Let's go ahead and move on to our action items. So first of all, I would entertain a motion to adopt the June 17th board meeting minutes.
I will motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt those minutes.
I'll second then.
So we have a motion and a second. Stephanie?
Lori?
Yes.
Annie?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
And Owen.
Yes.
Excellent. Motion passes. Let's see. I think we're going to move this around just a little bit in the event that Julie is able to join us to vote on an important topic. So let's move on, and I will entertain a motion to adopt the 2025 to 27 biennium budget.
So moved.
Yeah.
Do we?
Lori,
Owen will
we do need to
second
fill
that.
out by number so that it's on record. The number does need to be set. That suggested.
Oh,
motion
the budget. Okay, very good. So I would entertain a motion to adopt the ACLB 2025 to 27 budget as proposed at $1,984,656.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. I'll
Owen will
second.
second.
We have a motion and a second.
Okay. Lori?
Yes.
Annie?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
And Owen.
Yes.
Okay. Looks like our motion passes. So our next item, this is, again, it's just kind of housekeeping, but our bank is wanting some very, very specific language in our meeting minutes in order to change our banking records. So I would entertain a motion. I'm going to read this so that we make sure that we get it right. I would entertain a motion to approve updating board banking records in all pertinent accounts to remove prior administrator Galen Cooper and prior board chair Richard, am I going to pronounce this wrong? Montow? Is that how he pronounces it? Very good. And add board chair Lori Egan as an authorized individual. Do I have a motion?
I will motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that. But I'd like just a second for the discussion portion of that.
Yes. And do we have any discussion on this matter?
I just want to clarify, we had voted on updating the bank records in our last meeting, and the topic here is that the bank needs this very specific language in our minutes. Is that why we're voting on this again?
Yes, we needed to actually name the individuals to be removed by
Got it.
name.
Okay,
Yeah, not just by
perfect.
title. Any further discussion? Okay, very good. Stephanie, can we get a vote?
Lori,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Owen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, we've got one last action item, and hopefully this is the last time we vote on anything having to do with this topic. But this is for the rulemaking on the PARIA. And so I would entertain a motion to adopt permanent administrative rules as proposed to allow AQB approved PARIA programs to satisfy the experience requirements for state licensed and state certified residential appraisers.
I will motion for that.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Feel like I'm stealing all the seconds, but Owen will second that.
You can be our second man, Owen. Thank you. Is there any more discussion on this topic? Okay, hearing none. Stephanie?
Lori,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Owen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. On that note, Chad, I'm going to turn this back over to you for a couple of reports.
Thank you, Lori. So in terms of the budget report, as you all can see, based on the information in here, we are experiencing a shortfall, number one for the biennium and for the last quarter. But not all the numbers are in yet, and that includes revenues. So it may not be quite as much of a shortfall as we were thinking. We have not yet had to touch the reserves just because of the timing of things coming in and going out. That reserve is still completely intact as of right now. So that's one very important thing to consider. The other thing that I wanted to bring to your attention in terms of budget is that we are continuing to look at ways to reduce the expenses for the board. And given the cuts that we've made, it looks like at present, we are probably in the next 6 months going to be making some personnel changes. Just in terms of budgeting and regardless of whatever else we cut, payroll is our biggest expense. And so we're going to begin examining what that looks like, and in terms of what are the absolute drop dead critical positions to maintain board operations and things like that. That doesn't have we don't have a ton of progress in that yet because it's just kind of that's the one thing I've been trying to avoid. But based on projections and trends, it doesn't look like it's avoidable anymore. With that said, there's also an item on the general discussion later on. I added just so that you all have the option to talk about it. We've run some numbers for different potential fee increases. This would not, I believe, touch AMCs. It would not touch our education. It would essentially just be for licensees. And when we get to that section later, I can give you a little bit more specific numbers. But the bottom line being that if we were to cut a position or even put a position at half-time and do a nominal fee increase of drastically less than $200, which I know is the number to get us to the break-even point, as we discovered, I think it was the last meeting. That I don't know is a very good idea in terms of the longevity of the board and appraisers in Oregon and all of that. But a nominal fee increase coupled with either a reduction in hours for one of the positions or eliminating a position would essentially put us right back into the green. So, in terms of not needing to touch the reserves, modifying our outgoing cash flow to match what's coming in, at least for the biennium, and then we can reassess again in another 2 years. So as far as the budget goes, yes, there is a shortfall. We're continuing to make changes as we can. One of the things that may be changing in the very near future is, well, it will be changing in the near future, is we're going to Teams instead of this GoToMeeting platform. It's not a huge expense, but it's $199 a year for this, what we're on right now. And if we have Teams, which is included with our Microsoft 365, it's basically within the state's software suite. The increase in expenses will basically delete that $199 off of the balance sheet. So multiply that by 24, and it's not a huge number, but it is, it's some savings. As far as that, the rest of that goes, is there any questions for me related to the budget? Bear in mind, Paul usually gives this report, so I might stumble a little bit answering questions.
No, understood. So Chad, are we at a point yet where we could estimate if we did need to increase licensing fees? Have we determined approximately what that would be?
So there are some numbers here, and an increase in fact, I'll just give you the numbers now as part of the budget report. If we were to increase licensing fees and renewal fees for certified, general, certified, residential, and state licensed, that would raise our total licensing fees based on the existing licensee population from 814,720, which is the projected number, to 878,370. So that's about a $60,000 increase, and that's at $50 per licensee. Again, not touching AMCs, or probably not even. Yeah, no, I don't see any touching of the inactive fees. So that's just for active licensees. That would make a difference at $50, roughly approaching 60 grand, a little bit more than $60,000 increased revenue.
Kathy, did you have something to add?
I just was curious, is there a particular reason why AMCs cannot be touched or are not being touched on this?
That's basically based on some feedback. Our AMC fees are already relatively high comparatively in terms of with other states. We don't
among the highest in the country. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and we don't want to lose any AMCs because, as you can see by those renewals, they account for a pretty significant chunk. The reason that we chose 50 as opposed to 200 was just to give a little bit of options. And as far as why the appraiser licenses were considered for a fee increase, talking to other folks actually up in Washington and elsewhere, we are not one of the highest when it comes to our appraiser licensing fees. Not that we should strive for that. I think I personally, as a licensee, I like where our fees are at. But that being said,
Washington is a very good example right now. But
right.
But yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Right. So just as for context, as I understand it, Washington's renewal fees are north of $900, almost $1,000. So, and again, that's for 2 years, but comparatively, our cost total out the door to licensees right now is $720 with the ASC, the registry pass through, right? So our license fee right now that the board keeps as revenue is $640. So this would be talking about raising it from $640 to $690, and then the ASC's registry fee goes on top of that as well. So it would go from $720 to $770 basically.
When was the last time fees were increased?
2019, before COVID, and that conversation started, I believe, in 2017. So just in terms of timeline for you folks, this isn't something that necessarily would need to change tomorrow or even this year. For nice clean numbers, it might be appropriate to start talking about maybe January of 2026, or in the midpoint of the budget cycle, the end of June 2026. You could always look at potentially into the next biennium. If we make some of those other cuts to staffing and things, that deficit won't be as large. We won't touch the reserves as much. And if we're talking about a 2027 fee increase, that gives everybody in Oregon time to process it and think about things and have input, and for you all to consider it fully too. So yeah, there are a number. We did run things at two different numbers. A fee increase of 50, like I said, would make about a $64,000 difference. A fee increase of 200 would, like I said, put us right back into the black. But I don't think that would be real advantageous to appraisers in Oregon.
200 seems a little unpalatable, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
So as far as the budget goes, that's the budget conversation that I had for you all today. Again, I'm happy to answer any specific questions, as it relates to the budget report, to the best of my ability. Yeah, like we were saying the last meeting, the numbers that Paul projected were absolute worst case scenario. So theoretically, they will already be something better than what's projected, but erring on the safe side, is where we kind of landed with that. So
Right. Yeah, and worst case scenario, I still think that we need to consider the possibility that there will be additional appraisers exiting the field as a result of the new UAD 3.6 on the
mhm,
residential side. So
mhm.
it's so maybe it's not worst case,
Right, right,
it could be worse.
yeah,
So
yeah.
okay, so all right, should we move on to the licensing report, or is there any more discussion or feedback on this topic?
I will say that this is Owen on the phone here. I have some concern about raising fees, but not raising them enough to cover any shortfalls. So we don't want to do any increase in fee is painful for everybody, and we don't want to have to do it. But we certainly don't want to have to do it in rapid succession. The
Mm.
last time fees were increased was several years ago, and if we do get to a point where fees need to be increased, I don't want to get to the spot where we're increasing them twice a year or annually because we didn't take a big enough swing the first time. I'd like to do it once and be
That's
done with
that's
it.
a really good point, Owen. That's a
Yeah.
really good point. So, Chad, maybe we could get together and you know run a couple of different scenarios
Hmm.
and see.
Well,
So it's nothing we're going to be voting on today. So
just on basic math, based on the numbers here, if a $50 increase would be a 60 some odd $1,000 increase to the revenues, $100 increase would be around 120-ish, 122-ish thousand increase to the budget line items too. Couple that with, again, a position change or elimination, and again, we're potentially right back into something approaching a comfort zone.
right, yeah. Kathy, did you have something to add?
Just a thought here was with the new UAD coming out, maybe we wait until we do see kind of what percentage of appraisers are going to exit because of the new UAD and kind of get a feel of running numbers at that point, because we know, like Laura, like you said, we know some are going to leave. We don't necessarily know how many are going to leave, but we'll probably have a good idea by the end of the year, first part of next year, right? Because appraisers are
Mm-hmm.
going to just start dropping
Well,
out, right?
it could actually, Kathy, it could take 2 years to know what the impact is going to be because of the renewal cycles.
The total
I see
impact,
your
yes.
point completely, but it could take a while. And early adoption starts in September. It doesn't actually become mandatory until November of 2026.
Right.
So it could be a while.
Okay.
Could be a while. But that's a good point.
The other thing to consider too is, do we all remember when the very first UAD came out and the form was revised in, was it 2009, whatever that was?
2005.
Yeah, uh-huh. I remember attending a class at that time where everybody was up in arms. Similarly, when the 2055 form
Oh,
for us residential folks was invented,
yeah.
these changes to the industry, yes, there's always a lot of grumbling. And what I've noticed is that we appraisers, we measure a thing that's in constant change, but we ourselves don't enjoy change too much, right?
Right.
Our
Yeah.
profession is built on measuring a changing variable. But in terms of the way that we do that, we don't all love change. So yeah, my hope is that people will wrap their heads around what the UAD is and not see it as the boogeyman. You know, it's just yet another way of reporting things according to the way GSEs want things. One of the things that I'm mentioning to every appraiser I can is that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are not the only two appraisal clients in the universe. There is a good number of attorney work, any non-lending work out there. It's a little harder to maintain. You actually have to work at that instead of just getting on a list and doing appraisals. But lending work is not the only work in residential appraisal. Certified general folks know this very well. They get hired for all kinds of reasons. Most of us residential folks, we get comfortable in the GSE lending work, and a lot of us never step outside of that. So that's going to be another thing that appraisers just kind of need to come to terms with, is the way that we've done things for 30 plus years now is not the way things are going to continue. It's just the nature of business that things change. And if you choose not to change with it, you will go the way of the dodo. That's just how business works. So my hope is that people understand that a form is just a form. It's just a way of reporting things, and that learning a couple of new terminologies or maybe a new software system is really not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of the potential revenue from an appraiser license, right?
Yeah, I think the UAD 2.6 actually went into effect in 2011. Might have been 2012, but yeah, I think there's a little bit more to it this time around, Chad, just because they are asking for a fair amount more information. But I have a lot of faith that appraisers will be able to adapt. I think right now it's just all very scary for folks. They're hearing all the, so to whatever extent that we can do to keep, stay calm.
Yeah.
I think that's the message that we should probably be, trying to portray.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, we got off topic there.
Well, sort of. It's related to licensing. Are we ready for the licensing report?
Yeah.
Okay. So these numbers are prepared as of June 30th, which is the end of the last quarter. As of June 30th, we had, in terms of active appraisers, 611 active certified general appraisers, 581 certified residential appraisers, and 116 state licensed appraisers. All three of those numbers, you can see based on the licensing report, have been declining pretty steadily since about 2020. The largest decrease, I would say, is in state licensed. I would say that in terms of certified general licensee populations, if you look at 2020 to today, we actually have more certified generals today than we did in 2020. In fact, those numbers have been relatively stable, give or take, 5% since for the last 2 years or so. So total active licensees in the state right now, we have 1,308, which is down about 60 from last year. So last year at this time, we had 1,365. Today, as of June 30th this year, it's 1,308. Inactive appraisers, of which I am included in this list here. Certified general inactives, we have 23 as of right now. Certified residential inactive appraisers, we have 31, and we have 20 inactive state licensed appraisers. Now, that would be a number in terms of considering the impact on licensees, which is why we also didn't really touch that in terms of potential fee increases, because inactive appraisers, they're literally not making any money by maintaining their license. Like myself, I maintain my CE, I renew every 2 years. Given my position, I feel like it's probably appropriate that I continue to do that. But my license is not a criteria for my job, right? So there's a good number of appraisers that have shifted careers, maybe in a tangential related field, but they're not required to have a license, but are maintaining it because, as we all know, it took so long to get these things. I'm not going to do that twice. So maintaining it is easier than having to come back and retest and all of that. That's where a lot of these inactive licensees, I think if we were to raise fees on that segment of our licensee population, we would see that number of inactive appraisers, which is at today at 74, we would see that drop to probably 20 or less, right?
And there are so few of them, it doesn't seem like, I mean, it just wouldn't put a
Right.
dent.
In terms of a meaningful impact on the budget, yeah, I don't know that
But
that would.
yeah.
Yeah. So, as I was saying, yeah, 74 total inactive appraisers between the three license levels. That number is up, actually. It's kind of bounced around from 2020 to 25, but is up from last year. We had 65 inactive appraisers as of this time last year, whereas today we've got 74. So an additional 9 have gone inactive over the course of the last year. Appraiser assistants. Here is the future of training appraisers. Today, or as of June 30th, we have 62 registered assistants, and that number does concern me because it's steadily, as you can see by these numbers here, it's steadily declined really since about 2021. We had an increase from 2020 to 21, another minor increase from 21 to 22, and since that point, well, we lost 30 or so in 2023. We lost another 30 or so last year. And between last year and this year, we're down about 9 from this time last year. So it's kind of a steadily decreasing trend. And I think we could maybe tie some of that to the difficulty finding supervisors, which is why that agenda item for Perea was on the agenda today yet again. Is that really, at least at present, appears to be one of the only possible solutions to the difficulty of finding a supervisor. As you know, we can't mandate that folks train people. And in Oregon, we actually have criteria. If you want to train someone to be an appraiser, there is a vetting process for that. So again, that exists to kind of maintain the quality control in terms of knowledge going in versus coming out. What we don't want to do is perpetuate a lot of the misconceptions and mistakes that have been happening. And we feel like starting at the ground level is where that happens, right? Building good habits to begin with, which is, again, why I see a potential positive upside to Perea, which is that universal set regimen of curriculum that everybody goes through, and you don't move forward until another appraiser says, yeah, that makes sense to me, and I think they're ready to go forward. So hopefully Perea will have an impact on those declining license numbers. As of June 30th, we had 96 registered AMCs, which is down 3 from this time last year. And 2024 to 2023, it looks like we lost 12 AMCs in that time period. So those numbers really have also been declining since about 2021. Our peak, I believe, in the last few years was in 2021. We had 120 registered appraisal management companies, and that number has kind of fluctuated, but generally declined. And again, I'll defer to our AMC board member, but I think that's largely due, or at least in large part, due to competition for clients, right? A whole bunch sprung up, and they've been kind of consolidating and absorbing each other for a while now. Unless Lori has any other clarity she wants to give me on that. And that, I believe, is the entirety of the license report. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to take them.
Hearing none. So, Chad, I'm very interested to hear your enforcement report.
Yes, ma'am. So in the last quarter, we closed 10 cases. Some of those were at the last board meeting. Those were the orders that you all approved for settlements and things like that. Open case inventory, we currently have 85. And if you look back at the last board meeting report, I don't expect any of you to have that in front of you. Those numbers are coming down consistently. They're not taking drastic jumps, but we are taking bites out of that apple between each one of these board meetings. The total number of cases is going down. I think it was 93 at last count or something like that. So active open cases today, we have 85. Of those 85, 3 were brand new and are being vetted right now. 72 need to be assigned to an investigator. 5 investigations are currently in process. So by the time those, come to fruition, that open case inventory should be less. Let's see. 2 of the cases, as of June 30th, these are the numbers as of the end of the last quarter. So between when this report was run and today, we've had an EOC meeting. 2 cases went to that EOC, and they're actually now before you all. Well, no, I believe actually this last EOC, those cases are not before you yet. We're still in conversations attempting to reach the appraiser and things like that. And as I said, 3 cases are before the board for approval today. So after today, it will immediately reduce our open case inventory to 82. Assuming that the 2 that made it to the EOC get settled in some manner, that puts us at 80. So you can see how that math just starts to very slowly inch down. Cases over 1 year old, and this is the number that we're all very concerned with, and this also is declining. It's not declining a huge number at a time, because as cases come off of our log, new cases age into that over 12-month-old period. So it's difficult to bail water when more water's coming in, but we're still managing to make an impact. And some of that has to do with the compliance enforcement consultants that we've taken on here. So cases over 1 year old, as of June 30th, we had 73. 67 of those are pending investigation or assignment to investigator. 4 of our 5 investigations are of those older cases. And again, 2 of those cases today that are before the board for approval are over 1 year old. So taking little bites out of both of these numbers as much as we can. I would love to just focus all of our energy on these older cases and get them dealt with, and get the appraisers the information they need to have the cases, to have these issues stop happening. But there are, just in the nature of what we do, there are cases that come in that are new, that are of high priority. And about every month or so, we have one of those, or every couple of months, we have one that needs to jump the line because of the potential impact to the public trust, right? So if those things weren't happening, we would be able to focus entirely on these older cases. But given what we're trying to work with and split time, this is what we've come up with to try and manage both of those, burning the candle at both ends, so to speak, if that makes sense. Are there any questions about the enforcement report?
So Chad, I know it's a later agenda item, but maybe we could just get an update on our contract providers.
Yes. So that so as we know, this program is brand new to the ACLB. So, and grant processes are brand new to me. So that setup process, the front end setup for this grant process, for utilizing the grant funds, took a minute to get dealt with in the way that Oregon wants us to deal with it, and in compliance with federal cash handling requirements and things like that. But our compliance consultants, we got off on a very slow start, but I wanted to make sure that they understood what we were asking of them before we started throwing volumes of cases at them and expecting rapid turnaround time. So with that said, we've gotten into a rhythm. They have been assisting us with looking at some of these older cases from 2021 and 22, and identifying cases that really aren't terribly high priority, or maybe the allegations were really mostly unfounded. Because what happens when a case is opened, opening a case does not mean that anything went wrong. It means that we need to look into things further, and in order to do that, we need a copy of the appraiser's work file. In order to look at the work file, the appraiser has to be notified that there's a complaint. So a good number of older cases fall into this category, and what our compliance consultants are helping us do, so that the investigators can focus on the cases that actually need, significant attention, our compliance consultants are taking a look at the case materials that have been provided and making some recommendations to the investigators about, well, I looked at, the allegations and the appraisal and the work file, and it doesn't look like and now that we have the work file, it looks like everything is fine. We recommend closing this, or we recommend, issuing some counsel to the appraiser, or based on what came in, this does look like it needs even further investigation. So they're not investigating for us. They're giving us the roadmap on the important issues potentially for the investigators to look into, and the investigators are writing compliance reports, if that makes any sense. So it's I
So,
wanted to keep that separation pretty clear
right.
in terms of our enforcement process.
Have they been active long enough for us to determine whether or not it's speeding up our processes or that we're able to close out cases more quickly?
That's a great question, and the answer is I can give you my impressions, but in terms of hard numbers, no, we don't really have that. I mean, we can see from board meeting to board meeting the number of cases closed during each quarter is going to go up, right? And as long as that first number that I reported to you continues to go up, that's a pretty clear indicator. That's a number of those cases are the ones that the compliance consultants are helping us with. So as of right now, and in fact, I can just give you the update on that compliance stuff right now if you like. Let's see
Seems like
here.
an appropriate time to do it.
Yeah, it segues quite nicely. So as far as the progress to date, what they have given, let me get into my section here. I've got a couple of spreadsheets. As of right now, they have assisted us in looking at all of the outstanding 2021 cases and identifying the very few that need actual investigation and forward action from the board. Out of the 17 that they've looked at, it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4 are currently under investigation, and I believe 7 of the cases that have been examined by our consultant. One of our investigators is actively in the process of collating that information and making a recommendation to me on, do they agree with the consultant's recommendations, that kind of stuff. We want to make sure that there are safeguards internally so that we maintain our process and they assist us in that process. They're not, right? The only role they're taking over is a lot of that early legwork, the time consuming stuff that really is mechanical rather than investigatory, if that makes sense. So yes, I do feel that they're making an impact. As time goes on, I think that momentum is going to increase. As of right now, let's see, we have, in terms of the cases that they've examined, yeah, they've helped us basically address 2021. We're into 2022 now, addressing those cases, and they're currently working on 1, 2, 3, 4. Bear with me here. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that I anticipate getting a response back from them at some point in the next week or so. I don't want to just flood them with things, so I try to send batches of things.
Oh, flood them, Chad. Go ahead and flood them. They can handle it.
That might be true, but I'm not sure we can. Right? We need to keep an orderly progression to this, and I don't want things to get out of control. So what we might start, actually, they're working on 8 right now. So they have 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 5 older cases, and I have had them start assisting us with those front end vettings as well. Once I look at a case, or one of the investigators looks at a case and determines, yes, this is an issue over which the board has authority, and those kinds of things. After we identify whether or not it's just an outright closure, because we don't regulate the kind of clothes you wear on an inspection, or the language you use with a homeowner, or things that we get complaints for that really are not within our wheelhouse. So they're helping us with that front end stuff as well. And we've started them on the first batch of those cases. The 3 that we have that are pending, they're actually looking at right now to determine whether or not, and at this stage, at the early stage, what we're making a determination on is they're recommending whether or not we need to request the work file to look at further. They're not recommending that there are violations or anything like that. They're just giving the investigators and or me that shortcutting to that initial determination, again, to weed the chaff out from the important stuff. And that does appear to be working pretty well. I can tell you that partially because of you board members, actually in large part because of you board members, we are entirely caught up with our licensing audits for supervisors and licensees. And some of that has to do with the fact that because the consultants have been taking on a lot of that legwork and detailed research stuff, that has allowed investigators and it's allowed me to kind of collate and police those audits a little bit more. So that is another impact that they're having. And at some point, if it looks like it's appropriate, we might have them start doing some of those examinations to take that off of your shoulders as well. So depending on the kind of time that they can devote and the kind of funding that we have available, the licensing audits is another part of the scope of work or the statement of work that we've got in that consulting contract. So I'm turning them into a Swiss Army knife, so to speak. And as of right now,
Let's
it's
get those old enforcement cases done before they start doing the new licensee audits, because we can handle those.
that is kind of where I landed with that as well. Let's get the significant, concern
Yeah.
off the board before we start diverting attention. So that's
Right.
why they're working on a lot of that old stuff. And again, helping us vet some new cases as needed if it looks like that's the best use of their time, or if an investigator is currently wrapping up an older case and doesn't have time to vet one of the new ones, that's still assisting in it's taking time off of the investigator's schedule, duplicating that work time basically to get more done.
Yeah, and maybe this is a question for Dan, but do you feel like you've been working with them long enough or well enough that there's no duplication of efforts, that they're not doing all the work and then you guys are going back in and double checking what they've already done? Have you built that trust yet where you take their recommendations, move on, and you don't do the research a second time?
I'll let Dan answer that, or if he wants to stay muted, I can.
Yes, I would say that at this point, we're still in the kind of sort of the feeling out process to try and figure out how they're going to best help us get the
Okay.
reduction in the cases. I think that that's still kind of the feeling out process, because initially, when every case comes in, one of the investigators vets it then and writes an extensive memo about what they found. They talk about what were the allegations and what were the facts relevant to the allegations. And then we also go through and look at it and sort of do like a precursory investigation on it. We're looking at it to see if there's things that stand out. And for me, what I see now is it's a process that's been an evolution for me as an investigator. I started here in 2019, February 1st, and I look back in that first year and the second year and some of those initial examination cases that I wrote memos for, and that process has evolved too. I look back at some of my initial examinations before, and I just try and improve and try and make them a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more efficient. And so every one of the cases has not every one of them, a vast majority of them have been through that vetting process already. And there's a memo in the file that talks about what our initial examination. And in fact, that's the reason they're there in the investigation pile, is because we made the determination when we initially examined it that it needed to go to investigation. So we're trying to figure out where the contracted group is going to be the best fit and the most help, and given all that information, given those facts, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know it's new and it takes a minute, but
Yep.
It's iterative.
well,
It really is. So the
yeah.
initial impressions that we got, and I don't want to speak over Dan, but what we saw, this was kind of hard. It gave me hope for the future, because in some of these older cases that were being vetted, that we had already looked at and determined we either need the work file or further investigation is needed. The things that our consultant was returning to us mirrored very much what we had found initially. So that was kind of a good test balloon in terms of the first 5 cases I sent to them back in March, that they were calling out and looking at the same things we were in much the same way. So in terms of training them into how Oregon's board interprets USPAP or anything like enforces USPAP, there has been very little that we've had to coach them on beyond the format of how they're presenting the information to us. So we've moved through the iterative process, and I think now we've got some tools that are allowing them to communicate things to us that will start speeding up the investigators' processes.
That's
It's just not a thing that happened right away. And bear in mind, we awarded this contract, I believe it was in February, was when staff made, I made the decision to award it to who we did. That first February through March was really just training and back and forth and Zoom meetings that, discussing with their staff and what forms do they use and what forms do we, all of that initial setup, getting, handshaking stuff. That was essentially what happened in March. So we've been really seriously active in this about halfway through March, April, May, and in terms of the numbers as of June 30th. So that's really 4 months. And as of right now, they've looked at, let's see, 17, 18, 19. So that's 25 cases that they've dealt with or helped us deal with in earnest, whether it's recommending, that we close it or recommending further investigation. Some of the ones that have been recommended for further investigation didn't go right to the front of the line because, again, they were more procedural and things like that. And we'll get to them when we get to them. But I do think that Wallet is providing that our consultant through Wallet Solutions is providing meaningful services here. They'll give us what we want. We just have to know what to ask for, I think is what it comes down to.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, should we move on to the approval of board orders? I think we only have 3, is that right?
This time around, that's correct, yeah.
Very good. And let's see. So it looks like I need a motion to approve case number 20-2464. Forgive me, the print is really small. And that was a dismiss with counsel.
A motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion on this one? Very good. Stephanie?
Lori,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Owen.
Yes.
Good. Motion passes. On to the next case. Do I have a motion to approve case number 21-2473? Another dismiss with counsel.
I'll make a motion to approve case 21-2473. That's Owen on the line.
Very good. Do I have
I'll
a second? Very good. A motion and a second. Any discussion on this one? Okay, hearing none. Stephanie?
Lori,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Owen.
Yes.
Very good. Motion passes. Okay, our last one. We have a motion to approve case number 24-2628.
So moved.
Do I have a
Second.
second?
I'll
Very
second.
good. Motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this one? Okay. Very good. Stephanie?
Lori,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Owen.
Yes.
Very good. Motion passes. It looks like we are going to move on, and it looks like we're running a little bit behind schedule, so I'm going to make this real brief. And it's just a quick report on the Spring Aero Conference. It was done virtually this year, which was kind of an interesting format. Pros and cons, of course, to any virtual meeting. You don't have the one-on-one contact in person with folks, but it did allow for a lot of additional people to attend, which is a real upside. So we got our typical reports from the ASC and from the foundation and whatnot. But a few of the highlights I wanted to bring up. I think everybody is aware that the new AQB criteria takes effect on January 1st. that requires a 7-hour valuation bias and fair housing course for all licensed and certified appraisers. Are we all, is everybody aware of that this is coming? Okay, very good. So Chad, have we already adopted rules surrounding this?
We have. In fact, they were proposed, I believe, last April and adopted last July. That was when the PAREA process was also started.
Okay,
But at that same time, I felt that based on the criteria coming out, that it would make sense to adopt
right.
that requirement for the fair housing course. I think the language in the rule is effective January 1, 2026. So our
Okay,
language
very good.
matched the criteria. Yeah,
I couldn't remember if we needed to modify any of our language or if we got it in there. That anyway, I couldn't remember if we needed to modify anything. So
yeah.
I did actually take the course. I think Kathy has taken the course. It's a little painful, but we'll get through it. So Chad, do you think it's necessary for us to put out some sort of communication to licensees
I,
about this requirement? Do we have
I
a
don't.
mechanism to do that, and can we go ahead and do it? It's it's kind of under the radar.
And yes, the answer to both of those questions is yes. We have every licensee's, assuming that they keep us updated.
Right,
Everyone's email is in our database. We can see
right.
that. We also have an interested parties list,
Which,
of which, in fact, the public attendees today, that's how they learned of the board, probably how they learned of the board meeting was that we send out an email directly that has the agenda in it and informs them of that stuff. So yes, it's very easy to formulate just a general email as a reminder, number one, that the 7-hour requirement for the fair housing bias course is effective January 1. And for new licensees, that's an 8-hour course, right?
data with the examination,
With
right?
the examination, yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing to be aware of is and this is a question that comes up in terms of existing appraisers upgrading to a higher credential. If you intend to upgrade after this requirement goes into effect, you will need the 8-hour course because that's the requirement for an assistant to get licensed. So if to become a registered assistant, essentially, that's a course that's required in our rules, is the 8-hour fair housing bias course.
Right.
If you go from that to a license level, basically a license application for any new license level or new licensee
Yeah.
has to include that 8-hour course.
Right.
So that's again another part of that criteria that might be a little confusing to some existing appraisers.
It probably is. Do you want to I'd be happy to work with you on this, and maybe we could draft something and just get that out to licensees.
Absolutely. So, yeah, and I think following today's board meeting is a really good time to do that because the other thing that we can inform licensees of is what you all just voted on with PAREA. And now that may not bear a huge amount of relevance to existing certified general appraisers or certified residential appraisers that don't want to upgrade, but it's still something to be aware of as a licensee,
Right.
for supervising purposes, things like that.
And maybe those should be, so we don't lose
Separate
people,
email.
maybe do them separately. But how about if I give you a call
Yeah,
after this meeting, and maybe we can draft something real quick. So
absolutely.
anyway,
Sure.
okay, so moving on, because I know we're a little bit behind. Um, there was, so we already kind of talked about the UAD 3.6. That was a big topic of conversation at the Aero conference, as one might imagine. So as far as how it affects the board, maybe not in a great way, except there is the potential that we could lose some licensees. But the other part of that is anybody that's reading appraisal reports is going to have to get used to a new format. So Dan, you're going to be seeing something a little bit different, in the future. But I don't think it really impacts the board in a big way other than that. So, but again, it's a huge topic of conversation. Um, Jim Park, who's a former executive director of the appraisal subcommittee, he brought up a topic that uh, not proposing, but calling out a need for perhaps changing Title 11 to allow residential appraisers to appraise properties, for five up to 10 units. And a lot of that has to do with this upzoning issue that kind of sort of started in Spokane and has kind of, blown up across the country. Oregon did this many, many years ago, but they actually got appraisers' input. So we didn't have that issue of the 5+ units to the same degree. So anyway, that's kind of out there. And then we've all heard about the state harmonization task force, and I have a feeling they'll be coming knocking on our door at some point. Of course, they have no authority, but I think that they would really like us to consider the possibility of allowing mass appraisal experience for residential, or excuse me, for licensed licensure or certification. So I don't know that our rules allow that, but I have a feeling they're going to bring it up. So unless there are any questions, that concludes my report. Okay, hearing none. Chad, I think we already covered a couple of these topics, but do you want to move on to the administrator's report?
Sure. Let me get back to our agenda here. Stay on task. So I've basically given the update on the compliance and enforcement support program. That was the conversation about our compliance consultants. As far as the funding for that project, that is coming from the state Appraiser Regulatory Agency Support Grant, also known as the SARAS grant. That funding period ends, I believe, the end of next month, and then there is a continuation. So this is a 3-year grant process. We're nearing the end of, well, it's functionally, we actually got notice and funding like it was after October. So the federal calendar year versus fiscal year stuff, I still don't understand it. I know what our fiscal years are, but in any event, we're now at the point where we've needed to submit a continuation request. I got that done, I believe it was the end of last month, early this month. That has been submitted. Haven't heard back yet, but they usually take a little bit of time to make those announcements. They did also announce another grant availability. They made another notice of funding availability for the 2026 year, starting in 2026, for another grant that's available for similar stuff. I think probably it would be good to see where we can go with the existing funds, and if we exhaust those faster than we had thought, that might be an appropriate time to apply for another grant. But I don't want to stack these things up and then have difficulty implementing programs, right? That's, if we ask for it, we need to use it. And given the slow start that we got, I think it would be prudent to spend the next year really perfecting our process before asking for anything else, if that makes sense. So that relates to the grant stuff. And yeah, I do anticipate that they're going to grant the continuation, and that we'll continue with our project funding. Haven't gotten a formal notice of that yet, but I don't think it's very long off in the calendar that we'll get that email back or that letter back.
I think things are a little chaotic at the ASC at the moment, but
based on the conversations that I had with our program managers, I think is what they're calling the ASC folks now, the compliance review folks, based on my conversations with our visitors last month, yeah, it's an interesting time at the federal government, and that's all I really can say on the topic.
Right.
They're all working very hard to make sure that everything that needs to happen with the ASC is happening. So we've got a lot of.
That's a nice segue. That's a nice segue, Chad, into
Thank you.
into our compliance review.
It is, in fact. So the
congratulations, by the way, it was very good.
Thank you. So and on the AMC side, so the what we got back so far, just to be aware, is our preliminary results. We now have an opportunity, and I think we have another 30 some odd days to provide responses to the things that our program managers made note of while they were here. There were very, very few things that they made note of. One of the things that they said is that they really appreciate the level of documentation that our staff has within these files. That happens to be one of my I don't know if you call it a superpower or what, being anally retentive. but, but the bottom line being that was something that they had a real positive feedback for, and are going to be pointing other states in our direction in terms of states that are struggling with how to document things or what should be documented. We're at the top of that list in terms of examples to follow. In addition, we get a letter for each program. We get a letter for the appraiser regulatory program and for the appraisal management company regulatory program. Our AMC regulation letter was essentially empty. It basically said congratulations and good job, right? And our appraiser program, let me look at some stuff here. It was also similarly very short. They identified a couple of things that they were concerned about. One of them had to do with an education approval because of the way that the delivery mechanism approval versus the AQB approval of the course timed out. There was a little gap where the course was approved with us based on the AQB approval, but the virtual delivery approval expired a couple of months or something before our approval.
It was a gotcha, Chad.
It was one of those bureaucrat, but that's why they're here, is to catch those things and to make sure that we're aware of them. So they brought it to our attention. It was fixed while they were on site. Yeah, there's one distance education continuing education course beyond the expiration date of the delivery mechanism approval certificate. Other than our caseload, which is no secret, right? Everybody knows that was going to be talked about. Other than that, that is really the only comment that we got, was about that one education course. It was fixed on site. I don't know what that translates into as far as a rating for the final review report. And again, we will have an opportunity to respond between now and next month. Based on our response, that will impact the rating, I think. I don't think there's anything to say in terms of the compliance caseload other than here are the steps that we've taken and are taking and are continuing to take to deal with that issue. So I think overall this was a favorable report. I think we're not the only, and this is based on conversations with our program managers as well. Without getting too specific, they said that we are not alone in our situation. I don't know what that looks like specifically for other states, but what I gather is that there are a number of states, more than just 2 or 3 or 4, that have caseloads that approach ours in terms of volume and age. I don't know how many.
That doesn't mean that we don't need to get this fixed, because it
Correct.
is serious. This is very serious. We got to get it.
Absolutely. So we do need to address this, and we're actively working on that. And I think that is the saving grace. If we were just doing business as usual and not trying anything different and saying, well, what can you do? I don't think that would result in the same report that we got. Right. It should be apparent to anybody paying attention, the things that we've put in place, the programs that we're doing, the methodologies that we're using to do investigations and close cases or address cases with the appraisers, so that A, we're protecting the public and upholding the public trust, but also the third leg of that is giving the appraisers the information they need to do things right in the event that they were operating under a misconception, right? We don't know what we don't know until it's pointed out to us. And sometimes, unfortunately, that means it's a call from an investigator or a settlement agreement with the board that makes you aware of the issues that were happening. So with all of that said, no, the fact that we're not alone does not mean that we don't need to address it. But I think it does buy us a little bit of grace in terms of the way they're looking at what we're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So with that said,
okay,
I think that covers the ASC compliance review. Yeah, overall pretty favorable. That no federal communication is going to be flowery and falling all over itself. But in terms of the way that they're communicating the information, I think it's as favorable as we could have possibly expected given the circumstances.
Completely agreed. And the fact that we didn't have other issues. We knew about this issue.
Right,
But
right.
fortunately, I'm not counting the education one as an issue, Chad. That was just a technicality. So
It's just if
anyway,
you're,
but yeah, and that was another thing that I promised I would help, write a response on that. That's kind of my superpower. So
I would love that feedback. Absolutely.
we work on that together. Okay, so very good. Then I think that covers the administrator's report, unless you wanted to bring up anything on service of process, or if we just want to schedule another meeting on that
I
topic.
think at this point, you all might need to consider the date for a potential additional meeting for an executive session. We've got a topic that the board does need to discuss, and if there's any decision made, it'll need to happen in open session. But given the fact that it came up in short enough notice that I didn't feel it appropriate to add to today's agenda. Having not been able to give any public notice or anything like that. So with that said, you all could communicate on the potential dates for an executive session at the next available time.
You
And
know,
Raul's on the call as well.
Chad,
So
are you comfortable utilizing the doodle poll?
I am, yeah.
Maybe that would be a better way than, instead of having all of us opening up our calendars right now and trying to get something scheduled. Maybe
In the
we could,
middle of a board meeting, sure. I
yeah,
absolutely can follow up with that. Yeah.
very good. Let's use doodle. Let's use
Okay.
doodle.
Done deal.
I think the goal is probably to get something set like within the next week. Am I right?
Within the next week, or by early next week at latest. Yeah.
Right. And I think it has a lot to do with Raoul's schedule. So we'll, maybe we get with Raoul before we put out the doodle poll.
Fair. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Then moving on, I think we already covered the topic of potential licensee fee adjustments. There was, do we have any other topics? I think Owen may have. Owen, did you have something that you wanted to bring up ad hoc on a conversation you had with the licensee, or was that not something for this meeting? I'm not.
I think maybe that's not something for this meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay, very good. Well, did we have any
Or,
other? Do we have any other?
or maybe you can give me a primer, a reminder on, on that topic, because the last time we all met was some time ago.
Exactly. No, I think I'm just misreading the agenda, Owen. So don't worry about that. But did we have any other topics for discussion today? I'm not hearing any. Well, if that's the case, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will motion.
Okay. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so Annie and Owen seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Stephanie, could you take a roll call vote?
Yes, Lori,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Owen.
Yes.
Very good. Motion passes. This meeting is now adjourned. Chad, I'll give you a call in a little while if that's okay.
Perfect, Lori. Thanks so much.
Very good. Thanks, everyone.